Hi, welcome to Green Rapids.
You're listening to Green Rapids, and today we have a special guest with us, our colleague, Sergio.
Hi, I'm Sergio Cira-Reyes. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So Sergio, if you want to tell us what you do, so the reason why he's our first guest is because, again, he's our colleague. We are all in the climate justice portion at the Urban Core Collective, but Sergio kind of started that for us. So if you want to give us a bit and tell us what that looks like.
Sure, I'm the climate justice catalyst at the Urban Core Collective. We do environmental justice there along with other things at the Urban Core Collective, things like education justice. We do Growing Leaders, our transformational leadership program, and we do other democracy work.
That sounds really fun. But what actually got you into climate justice? Because UCC didn't always have an environmental justice team, did they?
No, that was actually a transition that I did in my personal life. I was originally doing community engagement. I was a director of community engagement, and eventually started, thinking a lot about what I wanted to do with my life. I really wasn't getting into the outdoors because of it was around COVID, and even before that. I was really thinking of ways in which I could transition into something that was more versatile for me career-wise.
Okay.
But also personally just thinking back on how I grew up and how much Michigan has to offer in terms of biodiversity. Not that desert is not fun, but that wasn't my thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and
fair.
so then I took this program called Shaping Narratives, and a friend of mine and someone who also took the program encouraged me to start a local chapter of the Latino Outdoors. And so
That's cool.
It is.
yeah, it was it's been a lot of fun, and I haven't been the only one that's been really active in it. Lorena Aguayo Marquez has also been really active in getting the group going. So my boss, Becca Velasquez Publes, says, why don't you do that at work too? And so that's how I started doing environmental justice through work, and we figured it out, and we got some grants, and now we're doing environmental justice through work at UCC.
That's so exciting that Becca supported that work and invited you to bring it into the UCC workspace also. I think that's really it's really great because since the UCC is a nonprofit, it opens up a lot of other opportunities for the kind of work that you want to do.
It really does. It was very encouraging to hear that, and I felt really supported. Something I hadn't experienced to that extent in any other job that I had before.
Yeah, where they're like, oh, why don't you make it a job?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool. And then, so it was just you on the environmental justice team at UCC for a while. What led you to expand the team and bring Erica and I on board?
Yeah, it was...
Your favorite coworkers.
Funny story because...
Funny story.
I used to always, in any work that we were doing, people would say, what about the UCC's policy on environmental justice? What does the UCC think? And I was like, oh, we feel at UCC that, but it was really just me. And recently, Beck actually kind of pointed me to a grant from the Energy Foundation.
Okay.
Around strengthening democracy, and then around energy democracy, right? And so we went for the grant, and then we got it. It was 8 organizations across the Midwest, and we were one of the 8 organizations that was awarded the grant. And so based on that grant, we were able to bring both of you on board.
And that was the grant that we mentioned in our first conversation, which is called the Midwest Democracy Grant. And so, it allows for us to do what we're doing here today. And I'm really excited about that. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, I'm really happy that both of you are on board.
Thanks.
It was a good choice.
Less lonely over here at UCC.
We're happy to be here. But related to the Midwest Democracy Grant, what are some of your visions for the future of environmental justice work at the UCC or through UCC?
I think one core vision for me, or a principle at UCC, is strengthening the capacity of communities of color to take the lead of their own environmental justice priorities.
Okay.
And that came about with our engagement with the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition and being exposed to all the work that they're doing on the other side of the state around water, around like air quality, and around the Ambassador Bridge, around in Flint. And realizing that here in Grand Rapids, at least, there wasn't a lot of work being done by communities to do something about their climate, their environment, and many of them weren't aware as I think they should about the contaminants that are affecting their lives.
Yeah. Kind of related to that, like I know that you were specifically looking for organizations that were working in environmental justice, but also have like a population or have representation that were of like people of color. Did you find that was a little bit lacking here in Grand Rapids?
Yes, I had been working with organizations through different work and even with the city. But I think those organizations were mostly, they were founded and led by white people. And I knew that there was a need. I realized that unless our communities led their own environmental justice agenda, they came up with the priorities.
Yeah.
Even if that agenda overlapped the same work that these organizations were doing, unless it was their own, they were never going to own it as much as it was their own. And the stories that were being used to recruit communities of color to these programs or to participate or just to get on the climate change bandwagon, it wasn't resonating with communities of color. And so then I saw the need for communities of color to kind of learn about climate change and environmental justice or environmental injustice and kind of have them tie it back to what's important to them in their lives and what's practical and what's real for them. And then based on that, creating an environmental justice agenda that they can get behind. So I think that's the difference between like what white-led traditional environmental organizations were doing and what I think is now starting to happen in Grand Rapids.
Like more intersectional.
Well, and that must be like a huge part of what fuels the work that you're doing, because I know that's a huge part of what's fueling my work. And like my passions are because I want more people who look like me to have this knowledge and to live these lifestyles and have access to this information, because it's not a very conventional practice for us to be out in hikes or on kayaks or in these environmental areas and spaces. So again, I'm just really appreciative that these doors are opening and that Grand Rapids is getting on that page.
Me too.
Thank you, everyone.
So earlier you mentioned energy justice. Do you want to explain what that is to folks who might not know?
Yeah, energy justice or energy democracy is the ability of people to have access to energy, clean, renewable energy. I'm talking about like wind and solar energy, and not methane gas like what we are using, or hydrocarbons that people are using. And so then energy democracy means that everyone has the ability to either produce their own energy through rooftop solar or distributed generation energy, and that's affordable to them, and that it's not polluting the earth or even the neighborhoods. It's like not the plants are not located in their communities and polluting their schools and their neighborhoods, and the ability to affect how that energy is produced, and to also have a say in how our local elected officials are regulating those utilities.
Makes sense.
I think that's a really good segue. So yeah, we would like for you to explain the Consumers Energy IRP, and then also maybe a little bit as how we get access to our powers through consumers, just for transparency and what it's like to get energy from these companies.
Sure. That is like a really complicated process, and I'll do my best to kind of simplify it. But I'll start from the beginning. There are companies that have monopolies on the energy, right? If you go to get energy from anywhere, it's going to come from Consumers Energy here on the west side of the state, and electricity, and then from DTE Energy on the east side of the state in Detroit. So here in West Michigan, Consumers Energy was asking to renew a contract or seeking to renew a contract, which is called an integrated resource plan, which is we ended up calling for simplicity the 15-year plan. This plan is a plan in which they explain to the government, to the state government, specifically the Michigan Public Service Commission, how they are going to produce power over the next 15 years.
Okay.
15 to 20 years. And so through this plan, the Michigan Public Service Commission has to scrutinize whether this is a good plan, whether there's going to be things that they consider as reliability, they consider cost, they consider infrastructure that the company has to have in place to be able to meet the needs anticipated, the power energy needs of the entire coverage area. And so then what happens during this process is that if the state regulatory agency, the Michigan Public Service Commission, approves this, then they're set for 15 years. And there's a lot of important policies that go into this plan. And this is a very critical opportunity for the public to weigh in and inform a process that's going to dictate what kind of costs they're going to have, how reliable their service is going to be, and the equity concerns around how you get your energy, your electric energy from this utility company.
So is it essentially the renewal of a contract and then what they're going to be doing with the next 15 years that they have of that contract?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, how do you see that impacting Grand Rapids or what the work that they're planning on doing? Like, is that something that's going to be pushing us forward or towards something that's going to be more carbon friendly?
Yes, there was. So as part of this process, the Urban Core Collective, we were legal interveners in this case, which means that we were stakeholders in this case, and we were able to kind of ask questions of this utility company, Consumers Energy, and also make requests of the Michigan Public Service Commission. So we were involved in this case. There was a negotiation that happened. We were involved in engaging with the public. We have certain strategies to get the public to weigh in on what should happen. Essentially, some of the wins that came out of this, and we consider them wins because they were asking for significantly more things from the state, but they wanted to close down some power plants, and we were able to convince them to close them down early, and some of those plants were fueled by coal. Some things that we had
super dirty energy.
Yeah, the worst kind of
super dirty
energy
super
source.
Dirty. That's actually a scientific term.
Yes. And what their plan was to switch to open or buy power plants that were run on gas. And they were calling it natural gas, and they're the ones that kind of termed the phrase natural gas.
Yeah, because it's greenwashing.
Yes, exactly. And it's actually methane gas.
Right. So it's like putting natural on like a food box and being like, yeah, there's great ingredients. And
here's
like that
some
word
natural
doesn't really.
Formaldehyde.
Okay,
just
yeah.
Add it to your lemonade. Like
exactly.
That kind of,
and so what they did is they were pushing to switch to gas. And so we really lobbied for them not to switch to gas and instead move to renewables, wind and solar. And so they wanted to buy another power plant. And so what they were arguing is that this power plant was for reliability. The argument is that they want to switch to renewables, but then because, solar depends on weather and wind also. Wind energy also depends on whether there's wind or not.
Yeah.
They wanted to have a backup, and so that for reliability issues, they wanted a gas powered plant. They did end up closing multiple plants, and they're scheduled to be retired. That's how they referred to them. So that was one of the wins.
Okay. And is that is that a schedule to be retired within the next 15 years, or is that just outside of that, just a kind of a promise that they're not going to continue to do that forever?
What's the time scale?
Yeah, I think they initially they were asking or they were planning on retiring by 2039, and don't quote me on this. I need to review the specifics, but I think that they're now closing it in 2030 or something like that.
Well, 2039 would have been the 15 years. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
And actually, there's some plants are going to be closed earlier than that. Mm-hmm. So it's multiple plants that are going to be closed. Cool. They also agreed to set a fund. I think it was like $32 million over the next 5 years.
Wow!
And that fund was to give assistance to people that were struggling with paying their bills. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they committed to not asking to make that up in a rate case in any rate case that followed.
Okay.
That's rate cases are cases that they kind of like in between this IRP, the 15-year contract or the 15-year plan. They ask for rate increases to cover their costs, their operating costs.
Oh, just to fluctuate along with like rising costs of anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something that's interesting about both DTE and Consumers Energy is that they're a publicly traded company, and so publicly
they're for profit.
So they're for profit, and they have to guarantee. The state allows them to guarantee their investors at least 10% return.
Okay, so there's no way that they would be like of the mind to be like publicly owned or provide this like public service to a captive audience for anything less than they already are, because they're meant to be just churning out more money.
Exactly. There's a conflict of interest there in the sense that in order to it's not in their best interest to cut costs to produce the least costly energy to the public, because they want to create a profit for themselves.
Mm-hmm. So does DTE have anything like that, or are they just totally out of that? Because didn't they just raise energy costs in Michigan recently? And then like, what does that cap look like?
Well, DTE is going through their own integrated resource plan on the other side of the state. And actually DTE is a terrible company that shuts off people's power and has a terrible service. They actually have sold the debt for people that haven't paid. Okay. And there's a lot of organizers that are doing amazing work on the east side of the state in Detroit against organizing against the DET. And so they're going through the same process. They have terrible reliability issues and related to equity. Also, in communities of color, don't get their power back as much as other, like in suburbs. And so you can imagine the implications for communities of color.
Yeah, especially with the fact that our weather has been getting more and more extreme. So people are being subjected to more and more exposure to the elements.
Yeah, colder winters, hotter summers, or just more inconsistent weather, leading to like having to run your things differently. Like, I know that there are some days where I wake up and it was really cold, and then all of a sudden it's really warm in the morning, and I'm like, wow, I had my heat cranked higher than I needed to, but like it was really cold that night. And so it's hard to find that difference too and be efficient sometimes.
Yeah, this is especially important when there's storms like the one we experienced a couple of weeks ago, where people were without power for like weeks, like at least 1 week, maybe a week and a half. I'm not sure, but there may be people that are still without power. But it was like, what do you do when you lose power for that long?
Well, and even I see on like the internet, people are like showing you how to make indoor stoves and how to like cook, and it's like, I really cannot believe we're even sharing this information with each other. And knowing in Michigan, sometimes it doesn't have to do with a power line; it has to do with a power company shutting your access to power off. It just seems very inhumane. What else are you supposed to do? And then when you raise rates, like my income isn't going up, my other bills aren't going down. You're just making it harder for me to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to pay you if you experience more than a certain amount of outage time, and then the length of time that it takes for them to bring it back on. And yes, exactly. The fact that you don't know that is a thing. and not everyone knows that, and so they keep it pretty hidden from the public.
Sort of like the city's secret composter.
Well, share this episode with your friends right now. Oh, man. So would you say then that working with consumers and being a part of the lawsuit is like one of your bigger like personal meaningful contributions to environmental justice, or like are there any more that you would want to share?
Because we know you do it all.
Ooh.
Yeah, right. Besides being the catalyst.
I think that that one of the more important things that I think personally is the kind of like Latino outdoors and having conversations amongst people in Grand Rapids, kind of getting nonprofit organizations, pushing them into mission creep and getting them to adopt environmental justice as best practice in their organization, putting that language in it in their organization and inviting them to be part of environmental justice issues. I can tell you, for example, with the C4, that's the Community Collaboration on Climate Change. As a leadership board member, one of the things that I am proud of is lobbying for organizations to come on board that weren't environmental justice organizations, that were like, for example, the Hispanic Center, who is now our fiduciary and is now enjoying kind of membership of C4. I say enjoying because it's such a great collaboration, but it's conversations had to be had with organizations because they didn't see that climate change or environmental justice was aligning with their mission. And as I talked to multiple leaders, especially people of color in Grand Rapids, many of them didn't see themselves doing that work, but asking for their support, bringing them into projects. I think that has been a significant impact that I've seen. I've seen the change. Watching them be involved in climate change work and environmental justice work is super rewarding, in the sense that like they weren't doing that before, and now collectively like we're building that capacity that we're talking about. That before it wasn't happening, and now it's happening. So being part of C4, and also like Latino Outdoors, and seeing other folks kind of enjoying outdoors and discovering a part of themselves that they didn't know needed to be explored, or maybe I won't speak for their personal journeys, but watching them do it now and talking to me about how it's some things that they're doing now have changed their lives, and then awesome. Going on outings and asking consistently, how many of you have done this before? And every single outing, there's at least one person that says, this is my first time.
Nice.
Whether it's like hiking,
that's so rewarding.
biking, mountain biking.
Yeah.
So that's, I would say, some of the things that I'm proudest of.
Yeah. And I feel like it's like an especially good feeling when it, like you said, organizations that are not necessarily environmental or climate change organizations, but they make the effort to like include that as part of their scope of or like their mission, because like it really does take everybody doing a little bit to like make those like ripples, It
does.
So.
And when you think about it too, like how is the environment not tied to housing? How is the environment not tied to mental health when going for a walk in nature is proven to center you? Like preserving these things and making sure that we understand why it's important to have an energy efficient home, why it's important to not have lead in your paint. Like all of those things are going to add up and create or in your water. Like it's going to create more awareness and more understanding, hopefully center us as people, help us make more sound decisions. At least I know I feel a little bit better after I go on a nature hike. Like, maybe I just needed to breathe a little.
Yeah, some oxygen.
Yeah,
that's some of the conversations that I've had with people, and some work that I was doing with WIMCAT around their community catalysts. they have an organization called Public Agency.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing engagement around the river, and I had the opportunity to do interviews with people about their experience with water or nature and the land.
Okay,
cool.
And what you're saying, what you're talking about, Erica, was something that came up consistently about how people felt when they were around water. And just, I did a lot of exploring and, listened to a lot of podcasts, watched a lot of shows about how, and kind of looked at how architecture always involves water, like water features and ponds and next to rivers. That's why
like fountains and stuff.
Yeah, the majority of the population in the entire world is around water, because water is life, right?
Yeah.
But also water, like you mentioned, is like a centering force, and like it's part of our psyche, and it has a calming effect. There's so many studies about what how it reduces stress, how you feel when you're around water. Yeah. The length of time, it's like scientifically documented.
Well, and we're made of so much water. Like, I almost feel like it's just, you're almost looking at yourself in a sense, or like what it is to be. Plants need it. We need it. Our planet needs it.
Our planet
which is why we should stop polluting it. I learned how to sing from Nancy last time we recorded.
Yeah.
She just every now and then throws in a little tune. It's nice.
Like thanks to colonialism or something like that.
So before you leave, Sergio, we're gonna need you to sing a little bit.
I don't know. I think that might take a lot of thought.
All right, we'll figure it out next time.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, though, we already talked about your work, but what do you do for yourself? What are your passions?
Yeah, what are your passions?
Wow.
The deep breath.
I think right now I'm finding a lot of joy in soccer.
Are you recruiting right now?
Join
I should say, you know what? I changed my mind. One of my greatest accomplishments is starting 3 teams.
There we go. No, say it louder. We love it.
On the GR Champs League.
Nice.
But that's outdoors.
Yeah.
And,
it's out in the park, so you need those spaces to
Unity.
be
activating
there.
public spaces, exposing people to nature, the land, the environment. Just they leave feeling good. There's a lot of testimonies about people who started playing soccer and what it's done for their lives.
Yeah.
So that's one of my passions.
For their lives.
Well, and I know a lot of people who have started, and a lot of them are like, oh, I didn't do it before, but it's also cool to see people like me joining those things, because it's like, man, I never really thought, like, I'm going to be totally honest, which when I was growing up in Holland, a lot of people did play soccer, and it was more diverse than you would expect when I say the word Holland. I'm going to be honest, but like, I felt like a lot of the teams were filled with a bunch of white kids, and that's because it's who I went to school with, and so I couldn't really picture myself doing those sports and stuff like that. So I love seeing adults just get into it and just be themselves, and enjoy each other's company, do something constructive.
Yeah, the MLK team plays, our home field is the MLK Park.
When does the season start?
The season starts sometime in May. We haven't decided. The captains haven't met about it yet, but
stay tuned.
Yeah. Fun fact about our team, MLK team, one of 12 teams, is that we have the most, for sure, the most black people on our team, and we might have more black people in our team than the rest of the other teams combined.
Dang.
What? The other teams
Step
combined?
it up, other teams.
The other 11 teams, yeah. And that's just to show what, intentionality can do.
Yeah.
Look at half of the professional soccer players. They're all people of color from all over the world. Like, they're not... Yeah, that's so interesting. So,
yeah, that wasn't happening with the league. So,
yeah, no big deal. It's just another accomplishment, but also a passion, which is so cool that we can turn our passions into accomplishments. I think that's one of the most empowering parts about doing this work, is that I'm just simply really passionate about the climate, and now it feels like I'm accomplishing something with that. Oh.
Another passion of mine, more related to the work, is Latino outdoors and just being out in the environment and exploring, doing things that are scary, that are new, that are that break stereotypes about, and maybe not just stereotypes, just things that are inaccessible to people that are people of color, inaccessible because of stereotypes, because we see ourselves as not doing these sports, these activities.
That is also like a safety thing too. Like I'm scared to go to the UP by myself.
Exactly.
We just talked about
Real
this.
talk. Mm-hmm.
The guy who was bird watching.
Oh yeah, that one guy that was on the news who was like bird watching, and then he had like the cops called on him because he looked suspicious, and it's like,
dude, I'm watching birds. Like, what could I be doing that seemed like it was wrong? But when you see somebody who's not conventionally in nature doing something like that, it throws people off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's so
wrong.
Like, and when it's like that should be the norm because I don't know, like especially like our indigenous culture.
Watching birds.
Yeah, I was like, well, people. Yeah, but even just like our indigenous cultures here, like like even they don't have access to the spaces that they should.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, physical, psychological, social safety. That's all the things, all types of safety that we have to feel to like be out in nature, and I think that sometimes folks that have always had access take for granted. And so around this work in particular, this was kind of intentional in the sense that doing this work was a way to prime people, to participate in and experience nature in the outdoors and kind of see what is out there, like the beauty, the majesty of the water, the Great Lakes, our forests, our natural resources, flora and fauna here in Michigan and really all over. And to ask themselves, like, this is what we're saving, this is what we're preserving.
Yeah.
And also to question, like, why don't I feel safe when I go to the UP? Why am I treated differently? Why am I sticking? Why do I stick out so much when I'm out here? And
why
those
is it a commodity for me to be taking a hike?
Yeah,
exactly. And then those conversations will lead to like, what else is happening around? Oftentimes, they'll lead to conversations about like the water and the like Plaster Creek, how polluted it is, and PFAS that was found in Rockford, and PFAS that was also found in the Roosevelt Park neighborhood.
And, with the Black Hills, or everything adjacent to the Black Hills.
Kind of sandwich in between.
Yeah, it's a really good conversation. But, I mean, you're spending time around nature and doing all these things, so some of these must be the reason why, or not the reason why, but does it help kind of fuel your desire to keep doing this advocacy work?
Yes. For me, it's, I'll be honest to you, I think that communities of color, people of color, need to be in positions of power and influence, because this is how we're going to change it. This is a step to liberation, and power has to be taken sometimes. And I think that logically, for me, this was a strategy. For me, it was like, okay, there's all these organizations, white-led, doing this work around climate change, and they're leading work. They're in boards and commissions,
right?
And those are opportunities for people of color to sit in those seats and have that power and influence, and be able to bring grants into their organizations, and then leverage those grants, leverage those seats, leverage those positions of influence, and infuse our experience into the climate justice fight, into the environmental justice fight.
Yeah. And
for me, that was another reason why when you've been working in equity, when you've been doing equity work for so long, like, it doesn't leave you, right? Everything, it's a lens by which you see,
it's
through
like
which you see the world.
Yeah.
It definitely does not leave you. Like, you start to see how the systems that we abide by are woven into everything that we do, from like the type of car you drive to how much you're going to pay for gas prices to who's selling the gas and all of that.
Exactly. What is the largest issue you see Grand Rapids facing when it comes to environmental injustice?
Ooh.
Dun dun dun.
I think most people expect me to say like a specific issue, environmental issue. But I think it's the lack of representation and of people of color in positions of leadership in all these fronts.
Okay.
That is, I think it's the one thing that's going to influence that. And something that I offer to white-led organizations or white folks that are doing this work, mostly like in climate action, adaptation, and sustainability work, is that they need to see people of color less like commodities and people that they can recruit to their work, and more like real allies that have something of value to offer, a lived experience. Because of the work that people of color have done around police reform, on equity, on housing, and all these social issues that impact them disproportionately, that experience, and especially here in Grand Rapids, the progress that we've made to be able to influence local politics is something that we bring to the table to these organizations. And that's why our work should be funded, and we should be put in positions of leadership, because we have real expertise to offer that is not currently part of their repertoire.
Yeah, so moving beyond just like the tokenship and just like the checking off that box in the diversity survey, like we want to just see like some real change, because you're right. And like people of color as like a widespread community are not necessarily gonna be as supportive of climate change if they don't see it as their issue. And I think we need more representation to see it as our issue.
Or like, you know how people, when you have someone coming into your space and being like, we want to help you. And it's like, how do you even know what I'm experiencing? Or are you looking at me from a lens that feels outside? Like, it's really nice to talk to somebody who looks like you. Like, if I see a woman in a space and we're talking about things that might apply more for me and that person, or if I see a person of color, or if I see somebody, you know, any person who appears to present as something that I understand, I'm going to automatically think, they're here for me, or they're here with me, or they might understand whatever walk I have, and that's going to be an easier conversation. When you have someone who very clearly doesn't come from the same space as you, it feels very impersonal. It feels like you're trying to project my neighborhood, and it's great for the environment, but it's hard to accept, and that's why I think people shy away from it too.
Yeah, and then there's also the case for like accessibility too, right? Like a lot of people that are in these spaces are either, I mean, a lot of the ones that I see in certain organizations might maybe be retired, or they just have like that time as a resource.
Right.
Whereas a lot of like younger people of color are like, we're busting our butts off working, trying to get by. So it's also like, it's also a privilege thing, right? So like I don't have, some people just don't have like the money, time, or resources to care about climate change or think that they can be involved that way. So I feel like having that movement be led by some leaders that are people of color who can provide maybe more accessible ways to get involved, I think is also really important, so that people can know that regardless of where they are in life, they can do something.
Yeah, it's so true that there's so many people that have the privilege to do this on their spare time, and so many people of color have to do it through work, and that's one of the real challenges that we're asking people, the impacted community. And just going back to what you said, Erica, were just talking about a core organizing principle to center the impacted community in the movement, and just that deals with accessibility, where we're us three, like we get paid to do this work now, but we're asking people to join the movement and do this work
for free.
Right.
And they're busy.
Yeah, they are.
And they're stressed.
Well, and
they're
really,
tired.
people, the way that we live in general, we are just under 30% of the problem. So we can all make individual decisions, but I think it's the education and awareness of where our climate change is coming from, so that some of the work might just be educating yourself, becoming an activist, not supporting certain, literally not shopping at a certain company.
Boycott Nestle.
Boycotting Nestle will be you supporting climate change. So you don't actually have to even recycle the Nestle bottle you're not buying. It's just, there's a lot of different ways, and I think part of what we want to do here is remind people that there are different ways, remind people that there are people who look like us who are doing this work, but also it's not just because it's a job. Like, we care. It is our neighborhoods. It's where our grandparents have grown up. You know, it's a lot deeper than it being a trend right now.
Yeah.
But we can kind of close out our conversation. I think this has been really solid one, though. I've learned a lot. And it's really, I think it's cool to get to know you and to get to know why you're here. I think we've heard little bits and pieces, but that's that passion work. I'm going to state here, transparency, I don't have a degree in this. I don't know if my other coworkers have degrees in this, but
I don't either.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't either, but I read a lot.
Yeah, I know how to read. I watch more documentaries than anything. Podcasts are great.
We love a podcast.
But none of us are like highly educated in the environment, and I think that's something else that maybe some people of color can understand. Maybe just your average person can understand. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars to have this knowledge. You don't have to go to hours of school to make a difference in your communities and to work in them. So yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything, Nancy, or if you want to close out, Sergio, and save the world with your last message.
I just want to say Happy Women's History Month.
Happy Women's History Month.
Happy Women's History Month.
Later on, there will be, well, not later on, by the time you hear this episode, it will be out.
Yeah.
But there will be a post about Hazel M. Johnson, who was an environmental advocate living in the south side of Chicago.
Yeah, she was just a really large advocate for people in her neighborhood who were facing health issues. So,
yeah.
One thing that I do want to say, you know, this is interesting that with Women's International Women's History Month.
Oh, shout us out.
Is that all the people that are influential in my in me transitioning to environmental justice work are women. They're all women. Michelle Martinez and Jamisa Johnson Greer for the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition.
Okay.
Also Anne Marie Hurdle, who's also with the Environmental Justice Coalition. Michelle isn't anymore, I think. Carissa Patrone, Alice Jasper. These were people that really supported me in my transition. They I was like, who do I ask about this? Like, how do I do this? And they were never like, what, you don't know? Like, you should know. It was never like that. They always pointed me in the right direction, supported me, connected me with other people. When there was folks visiting the city, they connected them with me. And so these are people that were really influential in the work that I do now. And they all happen to be women. So
okay,
shout out to women.
Shout out to women. Thank you for having a list of people like that brought you here. I think that's so important to remember, like the influences that brought us here. And I mean, women.
Yeah.
We're amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that a part of my journey, I feel, started with one of my friends. Her name is Rachel Barecki, but yeah, she's also a woman.
If we're shouting people out.
Shout out to Rachel.
No, a huge part of the reason why I'm here is Alita Kelly, because of some of the work that she was doing. She started Freedom Schools, which is how I met Sergio. Freedom Schools in Grand Rapids. Shout out. Taking kids into nature. I mean, it's just, I think we all have those very influential people that pave that path. I'm going to start making my list.
Yeah.
She has.
But Happy Women's History Month to all of the influential women on our list.
She didn't coerce either one of us into saying this. I swear this is.
I love gardening and farming. Urban farming.
I love house projects. Food justice.
Because of Alita Kelly.
Oh, thank you. All right, yeah. Thanks for being here today. This is probably the best first interview. You made it really easy and exciting, fun.
Yeah, so thanks for letting us pick your brain.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to see what's going to come of it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
He didn't force us to do this. Yeah, and thank you for listening to Green Rapids. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode.
Exactly 2 weeks.
Exactly 2 weeks. It'll be the best. It'll be the highlight of your week. Yeah. Don't forget, you can find all of our social medias on our website, greenrapidspodcast.com.
Music credits go to Imari Curry, who created this, the music in the beginning and end of this episode.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Peace.
Bye.
That's great.